This is part 2 of Diego and I's interview with Brian Callow. We're going to talk about his marketing strategies, his pricing, some of the products he's growing, and we're going to check out his compost pile. That's coming up next on The Urban Farmer.
Right now.
Oh, so there's only 3 of these in production right now.
And we have a 4th right here that just finished. Just in the process of cleaning it. So by next Friday, this one will be in production as well.
So are they sort of staged?
Yeah.
Like a succession crop in a way?
We try to do a greenhouse a week. That's kind of the plan.
Yeah.
So in 2 weeks, we'll have this 5th greenhouse, which is a new addition to the farm, in production hopefully. So we're headed towards doing about 400 pounds a week at this point.
400 pounds a week.
That's kind of where we're headed.
Nice.
We'll sell it.
And what's the average price per pound? Like $12 or something? Or
For our books, it's about $10.
Yeah.
But our prices for restaurants are between $8 and $12 a pound. The farmers market about 14 to 20. And really, that's just because it's smaller quantities, so you charge a premium
for handling and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
pretty good margins.
Yeah. It's not
Pretty
bad.
good numbers.
Are all these mixed species? Or
Yeah,
is this
everything-
like this is oyster?
It doesn't matter. It's just all I'm concerned about is that the temperature it likes. So we mix all our species in there, but we'll just kind of clump like a section of one species together. So when I'm harvesting, it's just easy, and you'll see that when we're in there. But as far as mixing spores of mushrooms as they're releasing spores and stuff like that, none of that matters. You can't ruin a crop or anything like that.
What about so that greenhouse is now empty? Did all the mushrooms that were in there pretty much mature around the same time?
Yeah. We'll harvest, like when a greenhouse is in production, we'll probably harvest that entire greenhouse, which should produce about 200 pounds in about 7 days.
Of mixed species, of different...
Of whatever I have.
Right.
And just to make our business interesting, I'll try to have at least 2 varieties going out every week for the chefs. And then in some cases we have 4 varieties, and I just kind of mix it up, and we run our business like a CSA. I just give a mixed box of what we have in production every week to the chefs.
So based on weight?
Yeah, they'll just give me a weight of what they're looking for, maybe 5-10 pounds, and then I'll usually give them, if I can, at least 2 varieties in that mix. And that's just the way we do it.
Okay, that's great. Simple.
Yeah, simple.
All that planning, like I can imagine the nightmare if you tried to customize, like...
Oh, it's too much work.
Yeah.
So I've been harvesting out of here for about 3 days now. We're just kind of finishing off the pink oysters, so you can see those. These are elm oysters. I'm actually one of the few growers in Canada that grows elm oysters, and I introduced this to actually a couple growers in Canada. I actually came across this in Oregon when I was attending a course with Fungi for the People. Jay Schindler runs that, and he kind of introduced me to this. Definitely it's a popular mushroom in certain parts of the States, but it's this beautiful pearl white, really large fruit body oyster mushroom. Different stuff in here. We have a whole production run of lion's mane on the go right now.
Oh yeah.
We have stuff up here, all the way underneath here as well.
These are lion's mane on top?
Yep. This is Foliota aptoposa. That's the Latin for that. It doesn't really have a common name. Again, I'm probably like the only grower in Canada that's actually growing this right now, and maybe like there's 5 growers in the States that have this culture that they're working with at this point. The common name that we're kind of working with right now is chestnut mushroom, but it's a really cool nutty mushroom. It's going to get a nice stem and beautiful kind of brown kind of dusty cap. They're awesome. So they're just starting to flush right now.
Wow.
And I'll harvest these in about a week. No, they'll get quite big.
Like thicker and taller?
Yeah, same idea, but bigger with some stalks.
So I noticed that these ones you open up, and these ones you just punch in a hole.
So we have stuff that either side fruits, a lot of oysters are shelf shelf fungus that they like to like grow off like a decaying tree, and that's naturally how they want to grow.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas other mushrooms, they kind of like to grow vertical, like out of the soil, and that would be top fruiting.
Right.
What's great about top fruiting is we can cram in almost double the production in a greenhouse, so it allows us to actually have a greenhouse produce a lot more money than we normally could. And this is something I'm just starting to play around with actually this year. I've never grown lion's mane this way, never grown this strain before. We have some Reshi here as well.
Nice. Wow, I didn't know that could be.
Can I touch this or will it screw it up?
No, that's fine. Reshi right here. So same thing. This is how we initiate them. We want them to kind of like bonsai, so we want them to grow in a high CO2 environment. So this is going to concentrate the CO2, which is going to cause the stems to kind of search for that oxygen, and it's growing up. And what's really cool is in about a couple weeks, I'll actually peel the bag down, then there's going to be more oxygen, and it's going to cause it to kind of shelf out and get these big fruit bodies on the top with these long skinny stems, and it's going to look like that classic Reshi, right?
Oh, okay, it will. I was going to say it looks so different than what I've seen off trees, right?
This is how it starts.
Wow, okay.
So we got a couple
culinary?
different. Sorry.
Will people use that for a culinary?
Yeah, that's up to me to convince the chefs. Some people powder them and they use it instead of cacao for like a chocolate recipe with coffee, stuff like that, and desserts. It's a very bitter quality to it. Makes an awesome tea, but it's it's highly potent and medicinal. So whether or not it can be used in the restaurant effectively, I'm not really sure. Definitely at the farmer's market, that'll be a huge hit. I'll get at least $25 a pound for these at the market fresh. Nice. We're growing a East Coast strain of Reshi right now, and something called Black Reshi, which is from Cambodia. So I'm working with that as well. I'm not sure where it is, but it's in there somewhere.
Something like this, when you harvest this one here, will it just be chopped?
No, it's really simple. When I'm harvesting, I'm just picking it up just like that. You're always going to harvest the entire block, clean up anything that you think needs to be cleaned up, and then that just sits there. This will fruit again in a couple weeks. We'll get a second flush. It'll be about half of this, and then at that point we compost it. So we get a very conservative pound of mushrooms per block, no matter what, but in most cases we're probably getting about 1.5 pounds over 5 to 6 weeks.
So those are about quarter pound each, maybe?
Yeah, with pink oysters, they don't yield as much, so we're lucky to get about 0.5 pound on the first flush, and then maybe 0.6, and then probably about 0.3 on the second. So we'll get under 1 pound for pink, but then the elm oysters will probably hit 1 pound on the first flush, and then at least 0.4 of a pound on the second flush. So everything kind of averages out by price, by weight, and we're looking, like for our numbers, we're looking to get about 1 pound at $10 a pound on average for our season. That's kind of how we do our numbers.
Yep. That's a nice round number to work with. And it's conservative, so you can speculate on it, knowing that you're not overshooting. Right? Exactly.
But we'll move to another greenhouse. We're not wearing any dust masks, so we shouldn't be in here too long. Obviously, these are giving off spores. It's highly concentrated, so if I'm in here for 45 minutes to an hour, I'm wearing a dust mask, and I'm really careful, right? But we'll be fine.
Are those about full size, the ones that you picked? Like, is that about as big as that would get?
Yeah, I'd go probably a little bigger.
Maybe that one. There's that too.
You want to try to pick them high quality because I'm charging top dollar, right? So, you don't want the caps to be. You want the caps to be slightly folded over, so they're still a little bit young. They're going to last longer. They're going to have more pigment. They're going to have more flavor. As they spore out and the cap goes flat, they lose a lot of weight. They also lose quality, and the shelf life goes down. So an example of the elm oysters, just as that cap is starting to flatten, this is probably going to be ready to pick tonight. It's just at that point right there. We might have another one. Be a good example.
Oh wow, beautiful.
So you can see the cap, it's just starting to frill just at the edge there, the bottom one. So this is only gonna deteriorate from here. So this is a perfect time to pick this one. And if you can successfully do that, you're going to have awesome quality mushrooms for your chefs, right? Mushrooms absorb toxins, and eating a raw mushroom, in most cases, you could get some kind of gastro upset. By cooking it, you're actually cooking out those toxins and making them inert. So it's always safe to cook all your mushrooms, even the bun mushrooms that you get in the grocery store. You should actually cook those.
It's best to cook your mushrooms.
It's a misconception.
Yeah,
when it comes
because
to
I've
mushrooms.
had some people kind of get kind of self-righteous about it.
They love to eat them raw, right?
Yeah.
You know, porcinis is maybe one of those exceptions. That's a great mushroom raw.
Yeah.
Again, I prefer it cooked, but in most cases, that's the safest way to do it.
So pink oyster? That's
Pink
what they-
oyster.
Right on.
And then next year, once we have a little bit more money, we'll make that jump and we'll go to 7, right?
Yeah.
Really, our farm is not sustainable until we have 5 greenhouses. That's kind of why we made the push.
Economically sustainable.
Yeah, to pay the salary I'm looking for, to get
Yeah.
the labor that we need.
And you
We
must
need
have
to
had
do-
a lot in to start. I mean, all the trial and error that you had to go through, and the mistakes you had to make. Those things cost money, right?
It took me probably 2 years of mistakes to kind of finally have like a direction of where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then I expanded on here with Thor, and you know, I thought I knew everything.
So you were doing this before you met Thor?
I was.
Okay. Yeah.
I expand here thinking I know everything, and I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Because suddenly the business was 5 times the size of what I was used to, and we were doing stuff differently because we had to increase production and we had to get different equipment. And it took basically the last 2 years, 14 and 15, to figure out how to run this business commercially.
Yeah.
And this is really the beginning of what the Fungus right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're just getting started.
It is. The fun stuff starts probably not this year, but next year. I'm going to start growing mushrooms on this compost. So
Okay. So now you start to reuse
exactly
all this product.
So we're going to play around with secondary decomposers, stuff like that. Well, your typical button mushrooms, portobellos, they grow on a composted medium, which is usually horse manure and straw. We're going to use a wood-based compost, which is basically contaminated grain and wood chip blocks, but also spent blocks from our greenhouses.
Yeah.
So
Contaminated meaning that just another strain got into it and took it over.
yeah, like we deal with about 1% contamination in the spring, and then as it gets hotter, maybe about 3% at this point.
Yeah.
There's more spores in the air. Contamination with mushroom farming is just a natural thing.
Absolutely.
You just need to keep it down.
Yep.
So, you know, anything that's contaminated, we'll just bring in bags. Like here, you know, this has a variety of green molds, black pinhead molds. You can see them; they're just jet black. You know, when I have a day when I want to actually get in there and it's not too hot out, I'll open those up and I'll mix them in the compost. But then when we're flipping a greenhouse, all the spent blocks will come up here as well. Then eventually everything gets turned in the compost and we start breaking that down.
Okay.
So then we can sell that compost for landscaping, for garden projects. Bartlett can use it again if
Yeah.
they
So
want.
this is mushroom compost that people
Mushroom
hear about. This is
compost,
essentially
but
what it is.
but it's wood based.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's really fun is, which I haven't done yet, is I'm going to try growing secondary strains, secondary decomposing strains. So everything we grow right now is primary decomposers.
Yeah.
So they actually break down the wood, and then there's other mushrooms that come in and then they take that broken down media and further break it down. So button mushrooms, portobellos are an example of that. Bluets, Prince Agaricus, almond portobello mushroom. There's lots of different stuff that I haven't had a chance to use yet, that we can then take this compost, grow different mushroom strains on it, break it down further, and actually produce a second revenue stream from that, and then compost that further and then sell that compost.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
That's
pretty
when you
awesome.
really kind of hit this exponential thing in a way. Yeah. Wow.
So as we expand, you know, the horse fence is going to get knocked off. We'll be able to have hopefully a pile of compost that is for production, a pile of compost that is going to be broken down over the year, and we can kind of start breaking it down and actually using it the way we want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this year's?
This is about 2 years right now.
Say you took that pile right there and you dumped a bunch of mushrooms you dumped a bunch of your wood chip mulch, not pasteurized, nothing, just right out of the back of
they'd
the
fruit
chipper,
mushrooms.
and just right on top. They would fruit. Would
Yeah.
they fruit what was there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They just fruit again. So what's happening right now is they're drying out and the mycelium's dying. But if in most cases you can rehydrate that mycelium, or you can take the spent blocks on my greenhouse and bury them in the soil in your garden, and they're going to want to fruit again.
Right.
And they're just going to pull nutrients. The mycelium's going to expand out of that block, kind of create another patch over those wood chips, and produce more mushrooms. The only reason why these blocks stop producing is they only have so much nutrition, and eventually they run out.
Here's a thought. I've asked a bunch of people this, and I've kind of gotten different answers. Say this pile's broken down. There's obviously mycelium in that pile. If you took this broken down compost and put it in your garden, would you start seeing fruiting bodies come up? Do you think?
You would most likely see a lot of Coprinus species. They're the inky caps that you see in most gardens. Anything that I put in there is most likely been killed off by heat because the compost is heating up. So what you're going to have is just natural secondary decomposers that are in that compost,
Right.
thriving in that environment. But these blocks haven't been killed off by heat, so if you put fresh wood chips over, they're not essentially composting. You're actually just giving them more life.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to get
and
use those blocks in my garden, I would take the block, not the compost.
And I have people do that all the time.
Okay, rad.
But this compost is going to be great for your garden to really just kind of keep it
Sure.
thriving and alive and just really active, right?
Totally. Oh, totally. Yeah. Like all the benefits of that,
Yeah.
from water, increasing water for garden plants
Absolutely.
and all that type of stuff.
It's all elm oyster in here. This is all one.
Okay, beauty.
There's a couple pinks in here. Look.
What would be your winter or cooler weather species?
We get into blue oyster, gray, king oysters, and some other stuff. But
Those are the main ones?
yeah.
Cool. What is like the chefs, like if they could only pick one, what do they seem to gravitate towards the most?
Well, I don't let them.
I mean, if they did though, what do you get the most like, oh, I love these ones?
Yeah, I don't.
Everything?
Yeah, I don't let that conversation happen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Control the market.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Like if I feel that a mushroom doesn't work with the chef and it's a consensus, then maybe I don't grow it. But in most cases, they love what I'm doing and they just want to know what's next. That's it.
Have there been any that have been cultivation successes but culinary failures? Like they're just somebody's like, I don't want these.
Yeah, nothing like that. It's more just, is this mushroom worth for me to grow?
Right. Have there been some big failures there? Like
Oh
in
yeah,
terms of
there's
just not-
failures all the time for sure.
But like stuff that you thought like, oh, this would be really good, and it just
Well, that's why when I do a new mushroom production, I do like 40 blocks and see if I like it. And then in most cases, I'll start the production off in the fall, and then maybe the spring or in the summer. And it takes me like 2 years to actually figure out where this mushroom fits in and if I should do a big production on it. And then I'll expand into it. Like the research on figuring out what to grow, when to grow it. It takes a lot of time.
okay. So this is a few years in the making right here.
That's actually just this is a strain that I created from spores, and I've compared that with 3 other pink oyster strains over the last 3 years. This is the one I like the most, and this is the first big commercial run really this year of this strain. And that's typical of the way I do this. And same with these elm oysters. Like I've been developing this for a while, and I did a big production of elm oysters last year, but this year I'm going to at least double the production for sure. What's cool is we actually get frogs living in here. There's one right here.
Look at him. Yeah, right there.
We got a pond just
Oh my
down.
God.
We got a pond just down there, and they just all kind of hobble over here.
And they don't affect anything?
They just eat the flies, and they don't do it.
Hey, right on. There's a little ecosystem coming in.
Yeah, it's neat.
Is an oyster like blue, pink, regular oyster mushrooms? Are they all the same in terms of cultivation, more or less?
Yeah. Like all mushrooms, they pretty much take the same path. It's just, what conditions does it like the best is usually what I'm trying to figure out. And how flexible is this strain? Does it have a temperature range of maybe 10 or 15 degrees? Can it handle the heat? Can it not? You know, like if we get a spike of heat in May, it might kill off this strain. It might be a cold weather that dies off, and maybe that's not a good strain to focus on. What we're just figuring out right now is indigenous strains to the Okanagan, they have a lot more tolerance to heat. So I'm playing around with a strain that's from Oliver that transitions really well into the summer. So it can grow, you know, down to 5 degrees Celsius, beautiful mushroom, but it can handle up to 30 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And doesn't actually really change the appearance of the mushroom. Whereas blue oysters, they'll grow long stems, they'll lose their color, and they just don't look like the quality that I'm trying to sell. So definitely temperature plays a huge role into what I want to grow when I want to grow it.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And these elm oysters all grow anywhere between 25 and 38 degrees Celsius. So this is the mushroom that I grow pretty much all summer long.
They can take the heat.
They love it. And the way this greenhouse works is we have basically intake on the front window, exhaust on the back. We have a humidistat that turns the misting fan off, and it turns it on around 85% humidity. So as it gets hotter, the sun's up, water's evaporating, the misting system gets triggered, and it just continues to mist until the water is retained in this environment, so that the mushrooms don't dry out.
Okay.
So at night, the fans hardly run at all because the water's not evaporating. It's a very natural way to grow. And we have like a passive air system with these little windows that we've cut out, so air just naturally gets in here, and then when the misting system's coming on, it's also drawing air throughout here. But if we get a huge breeze, we're just naturally getting air forced in and out.
Yeah.
And these grow rooms run around 700 parts per million for CO2, and that's pretty much right on what you're looking for when you're growing mushrooms.
Nice.
Is the worry with the heat that they dry out, not that it slows them down or affects growth?
Yeah, like if the humidity drops, the mushrooms are going to dry out, and we're just not going to have high quality mushrooms to sell.
Okay. Is that appearance-wise? Would that mean appearance or taste, texture, everything?
But yeah, just everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're trying to offer a premium product that we can charge a high price per pound. So
Sure.
our stuff has to look awesome. And what's really cool is because we're growing in natural sunlight, the pigment of our mushrooms in most cases is more prominent than indoor mushrooms, because you're getting that pigment from the sun, which is actually really
Right.
neat. So we're actually growing essentially what you would pick outdoors in the forest, very natural looking mushroom compared to most indoor mushroom operations. In most cases, the mushrooms are skewed a little bit in color and appearance. They have too high CO2 because they can't bring enough air in. All these things will affect the natural look of the mushroom, whereas ours are very natural. And that's important to know. So when we're growing blue oysters in the colder season, they're really dark, like majestic blue. They're beautiful.
They're growing in the conditions they want to grow in, essentially, yeah, right? Yeah. Does where you slit the bag matter?
No, it's just I'm controlling where I want them to grow. So they're going to sense oxygen, moisture from that opening, and then the mushroom naturally wants to fruit out so that it can release spores and continue on its life cycle.
It finds the hole.
Yeah, so it just finds the hole.
What if you like?
And if I cut multiple slits, it's still going to produce the same amount of pounds that it normally would produce. It's going to output that much energy, but into smaller mushrooms.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So we're controlling what I like to have about a half-pound cluster per mushroom. That's kind of what I'm trying to control. So we do 2 slits, 1 on either side, and that usually gives me what I'm looking for.
That concludes Diego and I's interview with Brian Callow. That was so cool, so inspiring, and so much of what Brian is doing there have the hallmarks of a very economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable business. Nothing is perfect. There are no utopias that I know of yet, but Brian is really pushing the boundaries of what is profitable and sustainable, and I think he's a true leader in this space. One thing that he mentioned in the interview is that he had never toured mushroom operations. He basically built this operation to his needs. And I thought that was kind of cool because I had actually toured mushroom operations myself in the past because I was interested in getting into it a few years ago, and I'd never seen anything like what he was doing. Everything I saw was either forage based, growing in a forest, like, you know, inoculating shiitake mushrooms in logs, something like that, or it was large scale factory type white and brown mushroom style operations that require millions of dollars of investment capital. His operation can be started on less than $100,000, so huge potential there. And I love the scalability of his operation in the sense that he can just keep adding more pads as he wants to scale, and he can take some greenhouses offline without having to pay the maintenance costs to run them. So the scalability, I love the modular aspect of it, how he can take that operation and put it anywhere. He could do this in a city, he could do this in the country, he could do this on a rooftop. The potential for this type of operation is huge and widely applicable to many different places of the world and many different market streams as well. However, one thing that's interesting to point out is the limiting factor that when you're selling to a grocery store that you have, particularly for us in Canada, mushroom operations are heavily regulated. And it's interesting because it's another example of how the mainstream market channels are often lagging behind when we start to look at what are the frontiers of sustainable agriculture, where are those places selling their stuff, and some of them are going to grocery stores, but you've got these silly government regulations that keep an operation like this or an entrepreneur like Brian from getting his stuff out to the public. So he's limited in the sense that he can sell to restaurants and primarily direct consumer market streams. I foresee in the near future, the supermarket is going to go on a slow decline because of this, because customers are demanding sustainably grown at an affordable price product, and the grocery stores can't do that because they're so regulated from the government, and it's really lagging behind. Whereas the food hub or food aggregator type models I really see is going to be the ones pushing the boundary, getting this kind of product to the doorstep or onto the tables of the average person. So anyways, that's another subject aside. I'll probably talk about more of that in the future, but this was a really fun interview to do, you guys, and I'm going to try to keep in touch with Brian and talk to him again in the future and see where he's going and how much he's expanded the business. So please leave your comments and questions below. I'll also put Brian's contact information below. He mainly uses his Facebook page for general messaging, so you can contact him there. He told me he's available for consulting, so if anybody else is out there who wants to set up an operation like Brian's, you can contact him and pay him some money for his time over the phone or in Skype or something like that, and he can help you get set up, because I know he had a few years of trial and error there, and I'm sure there's a lot of benefit and value to gain from his insight on the mistakes and successes he had. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you want to donate to the show, you can do that at theurbanfarmer.co/support, and these donations are really helping me scale up the production of these videos. I got a better camera here, I've got a better microphone so the audio is better, invested in a drone, so I'm hoping I can continue to bring better quality content to you guys and more often, and your donations are definitely allowing me to do that. And so thank you so much for those of you that have donated, and we will see you again soon. Okay.